Monsieur? Coupe, shampoing, brushing?
Vous voyez, j'aime beaucoup l'arrêt sur le côté.
On peut peut-être voir autre chose. L'arrêt sur le côté, c'est dépassé. Vous savez, la grande tendance à l'heure actuelle, c'est... La tendance, c'est l'arrêt au milieu. Vous savez, la grande tendance à l'heure actuelle, c'est... Ça vous irait tellement mieux de porter l'arrêt au milieu. Et pour l'entretien, c'est super. Une lotion et un coup de fer.
Et vous trouvez ça mieux?
C'est beaucoup mieux. Ça vous irait tellement mieux de porter l'arrêt au milieu. Et pour l'entretien, c'est super. Une lotion et un coup de fer. Prêt? Prêt? Au milieu. Une lotion. Au milieu.
What a weird ending to that song. And in the background, I have another lounge music song going on where the main instrument seems to be a saw, if you've ever heard a saw being played. Um, I don't know what's going on with that. Hello, everyone. Hello, our users. My name is John Kulas. I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, 12-year user of R for normal, boring, statistical applications. But for the majority of the time now, those 12 years, I'd say 9 or 10 years, I've been not only crafting my analyses within the scripting environment, but I've also been executing full projects within that environment. So that started off with papers. So I started writing papers within RStudio using a package called Papaja, which facilitates the creation of APA formatted papers. Then we started doing conference posters, and before you know it, I'm now here where I do everything using this process. So I'm here every Tuesday at 7 o'clock and hang out for about an hour. Last couple of weeks, well, last week in particular, it was about an hour and a half because I'm so geeked up on last week's topic, which is slides. You're looking at one of the slides here that we use using these processes that we talk about every week. And as a matter of fact, so I've been using these authoring systems so frequently now that I do them even if there's no analytical component to what I do. So these slides don't, well, there is an analytical component to this week's slides, but frequently there's really nothing data visualization or data analysis related in these slides, but I still go to these to create them. I love them so much. So I hang out for about an hour, maybe sometimes a little longer than an hour. Sorry about that. But we're just here to promote this way of structuring your work such that you don't go to RStudio or Positron or Jupyter Lab or whatever your favorite IDE is. You don't go to that just for the analysis. No, no, no. Oh, no, no, no. You go to those environments to execute your entire project. Write your paper, create your slide presentation deck, create a website, create books, create an interactive internet application, which we're going to talk about tonight. So we're here to promote this. If you want to help out and promote, you can actually like the video. That would help out. And if you'd like to subscribe for notifications, that's great as well. But I'm here to promote this because I think it's very, very important. I've kind of given up on the whole publishing aspect of being an industrial and organizational psychologist. It kind of burnt me out a little bit. So this is where I focus my energy, is I want other people to use this work process. If you're in this area called data science, whatever that means nowadays, it can mean a lot of different things. But if you're touching quantitative things and you're using R, you're using Python, there's no reason not to use some of these support tools that we've been talking about weekly, and we're going to talk about tonight as well, to execute whatever it is that you want to put those analyses in. Do it all within the same platform. So we use the metaphor of an academic office hour. I mentioned I was a professor for a long, long time. I still occasionally pick up a class, so I'm not a full-time professor anymore, but I'm still familiar with that environment. And for years, I had my office was on the third floor of kind of a non-traditional academic building for a long, 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 long time. And I swear I did not have a single student come to any one of my office hours for, I don't know, years. I think it was probably years. So I don't know why I use this metaphor of an academic office hour, because it wasn't ever very successful when I was a full-time professor, but who knows? Maybe we'll strike lightning in a bottle. What's the saying? Catch lightning in a bottle? I don't even know why would you want to do that. You'd be electrocuted if you did that. But anyway, we're using this because it's familiar. So I hang out for about an hour. Sometimes I'm joined by collaborators on these types of projects. They'll pop in and hang out. They haven't been popping by lately. So if any of you are frequent watchers or interested in this, just drop me a note. You're free to pop in as well and hang out with me. That's fine. So we're here. The main idea of these weekly sessions, and the reason it's live, is I wanted to provide a resource to people who are interested in this, but maybe aren't sure where to start, or maybe you're stuck, or maybe you just want someone to chat with and bounce some ideas off of. No, thought of this idea before AI became what AI currently is. So AI is probably fulfilling that need or that function for a lot of people. But I'm not AI, I'm a real person. So I'm here if ever on Tuesdays between 7 and 8 Eastern you want to pop by and ask a question. And I'll keep an eye on the comments, and that's the way that I thought that would work. And so that always takes priority. If someone has a question or something that they want explored, we'll just drop what we're doing and head to that. In the absence of that, we've been focused on features using this process. And in addition to being focused on just isolated or specific capabilities, we've been following the alphabet. So we've been climbing the alphabet from the letter A. We'll go all the way up to the letter Z, and then I don't know what we'll do after that. But currently we're on the letter S. And so tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at Shiny apps. And so Shiny is a package that facilitates the creation of web-based interactive applications that are entirely scripted through R. They can also be scripted through Python. But those are the two main routes that people interact with Shiny to create these interactive web apps. And so we'll spend the back half of tonight on those Shiny apps. But before we do that, because every week we do an exploration in this open-ended, unscripted, don't really have a roadmap of what we are going to do format and kind of way that we take a look at these features. At the beginning of each session, what we do is we try to condense and collapse and present the information learned the previous week in a format that's a little more conducive to learning. So let's actually get into our transition into what happened last week.
Last time you remember, Bullwinkle and his weather forecasting bunion were being spirited away on a mysterious airplane to who knows where.
I know, but I'll never tell.
Meanwhile, back in the nation's capital, Rocky is trudging from office to office trying to get help for his friend.
Now, let's see. Does this moose have any distinguishing marks?
Well, he has a bunion that tells you if it's going to rain or not.
Well, in that case, you want the Weather Bureau.
I do?
Right that way.
And as he entered the door of the Weather Bureau, Rocky got his first glimpse of the modern miracle of weather forecasting. The batteries of electronic computers, the banks of teletype communicators, the sensitive seismographs, the automatic anemometers and barographs. Such a magnificent example of automation at its finest that only one man is required to run the entire bureau, the chief forecaster himself.
Forecast room. Top secret. Do not enter. But this is an emergency.
And the plucky squirrel marched past the signs and into the forecast room. Then, strangely enough, he heard a familiar voice.
So this week's slides, every week's slides, they're in the comments, also called chat, I believe. They're the same slides you're looking at here. I host them online every week so you can have access to them. There's also a link to a how-to tutorial. So it walks you through how to create your own report. So if you're interested in crafting, if you're interested in building documents using these processes that we're talking about, all you need to build that report is a piece of software called Quarto. And if you're not sure how to get Quarto, drop me a note and I can help you with that. And then this week I did drop into the chat, into the comments, I dropped in a third resource, and that's an online version of this book. I have a hard copy of it, and I just was looking at it earlier today to kind of remind myself of the topic that we're going to be covering tonight. But it's actually a fantastic resource, and I'm probably going to duck into that link tonight when we get to Shiny, because some of the capabilities of the online resource are a little easier to interact with with than the book. I don't need to type as much. I can copy and paste from it. So anyway, take a look at those. If you stumble across this, YouTube session within 24 hours of when it goes live, I think it's 24 hours, you won't see the comments or the chat populated. So I did put the link to the slides and then the link to the tutorial in the description of the video. I did not put the link to the Mastering Shiny textbook, the online version of that, in the description. But the other two are linked in there. So take a look at that if you get to this too early. I believe the chat comments are populated after roughly 28, so a day or two later. If you stumble across this, you should be able to see those comments. Okay, so last week I was super geeked up, and the reason we went about an hour and a half is because this is my favorite product to create using these principles and processes that we talk about weekly. So Quarto is a piece of software independent from RStudio, but it's created by the makers of RStudio. And so Quarto facilitates the creation of what they call publication-ready documents. One of the types of documents that they facilitate are these RevealJS slides, and they're so fun. This is 113 of them that I made just for these weekly sessions. I made several for other purposes as well. But what we took a look at last week were some of the, just some, not all, but some of the capabilities and reasons why you might want to use these reveal slides. Whoa, that looks a lot different. Why does that look so incredibly different? There we go. Must have had something to do with the way I had my browser set up, but I've never seen that pop-up window like that before. So anyway, we took a look at lightbox images, which is one of the capabilities of these RevealJS slides. You can also, we talked also about zooming. You can, oops, I kind of have two things going on there. You can have the Alt button on your keyboard and then press interact with your mouse, and you'll zoom in on different aspects of the slides. That kind of does something similar. Depending on the browser, you might get this downloads feedback. That's kind of I wouldn't say it's a bug, but it's something that I've noticed recently on the Microsoft Edge browser that I have by default, that's looking at or that's displaying these Quarto Reveal slides locally on my machine. So lightbox images we looked at. We talked about cross-referencing as well, and one of the reasons I think these are so powerful in an educational context is the ability to very easily link back to previously learned material and kind of try to reinforce it and embed it and contextualize it within what you're currently saying. So, if you want to link back to, if I'm talking about capabilities, I have a hyperlink there that goes to last week's listing of capabilities, and there's extensions and there's built-in capabilities here. So that's a very easy cross-reference that you can do within these Reveal slides. You can also cross-reference within the slide deck itself. So I have this today's topic. You see a hyperlink there indicated by the different color. That's going to go straight to the slide that focuses on today's topic. I do have some functionality embedded in this slide as well. I have what are called fragments. And so fragments, you can see as I kind of wheel back and forth here between the first column and the second column, there's not just a introduction of the new material, but there's a shadowing out of the old material. There's all kinds of built-in capabilities, that little subtle things that you can add. And the more goop you add, probably the more annoying it is just to navigate it. But I wanted to put those fragments on to demonstrate again some of the built-in capabilities that these RevealJS slides have. And then we talked about code folding, but we didn't play with it at all. But code folding is just simply, and again, this is really powerful and important and nice to have in an instructive sense. If you're teaching something like code, if you want to present R code or Python code or whatever language it is that you're trying to get students to build their skills with, you can hide it, but have it accessible if they want to interact with it. And so code folding is a neat aspect, not just of RevealJS slides, but any HTML type product that you make using via Quarto. And so the other thing that we talked about that's really nice is within each of these code blocks that's displayed in these HTML windows is you have this clipboard, and that clipboard is fantastic. And as a matter of fact, it's one of the reasons that I want that online version of Hadley Wickham's Mastering Shiny book, because this clipboard is going to be enabled. And so if I want to copy and paste code bits that Hadley has in his resource, it's easier to access that way. So code folding, we talked about, but that's what it looks like. One of the real powerful aspects of using these RevealJS slides is that they enable all of the interactive type visuals that you can do using R, and this is a Plotly object. And so Plotly has some interactive capabilities to it that are a bit more limited than what we're going to see with Shiny. With Shiny, you can have full interaction with a data object. With Plotly, you can have limited interaction in terms of typically how information is displayed, but you can see some of the interactivity there, just kind of playing with this graph. Here you see on the left two different ways to communicate the code that was used to create, in this particular case, the Plotly object on the right. Now, just for space purposes, what I did was I didn't repeat or fully echo the full script. If you want to see what it is, it's hyperlinked here, so you can hit the available here hyperlink, and that will take you to the full code that creates this graph that you're seeing on the right, including the animation in terms of the play button there. And then one of the really neat kind of pieces of forethought that the Quarto publishers had was that instructors might have they might have many different, obviously, orientations and needs and purposes. But if you're teaching this process of using these scripting languages, but maybe also interested in using these scripting languages to create broader documents, we have the capability of copying not only the code, so the code, if I paste that into just any sort of editor, you'll see that the code itself is repeated, but you can also present code within these fenced blocks, and the code block itself is something that's really important to be able to share. If you're trying to communicate to a learning audience of students, not just the code itself, but embedding the code again within a broader document. And this is how we integrate analytical information within the broader project that we're working on within the context of either Quarto or R Markdown. So having a fenced echo is really powerful, and it's something that I've started to use quite frequently. As a matter of fact, if you choose to access the tutorial, the how-to tutorial, you're going to see that I use fenced echoes quite a bit throughout that document. And I guess we talked about some extensions that I think are neat for RevealJS slides, and one of them that again, I don't know the extent to which my students took advantage of this, but an undergraduate class that I had last spring semester, I included these sorts of quiz questions at the end of each slide presentation. And so it just was a way to reinforce the material, at least in theory, a way to reinforce the material and a way to get the students to kind of actively engage with the content that you're trying to teach. And so there's, you can customize the feedback that you actually get on these. It's just really slick, actually. And that's just one of the extensions that you can have. There's so many, and there's listings in last week's slide deck of a bunch of different capabilities that you may be interested in based on the purpose of your presentation. There's going to be something there that really, beyond just the built-in capabilities, maybe there's something extra, some goop that you're interested in, and maybe gives a little extra oomph to your presentation. So I can't speak highly enough of these slides. I love them so much. So I hope that last week and this week's presentation has maybe given people some reason to think and consider maybe adopting these. And again, if anyone is out there and that you're on the fence and you want a little help, reach out to me. I'll give you everything I have to help you get started and show you everything that I've done and built up. And by the way, there's a link. There's always a link on these changing logos in the bottom right of each week's slides. That'll take you to the repository where I keep all of the source files for all of these weekly slides. So you can always just go in there and grab code that you might want to salvage, with the one caveat being that I've now, this has been over 2 years that I've been kind of slowly layering capabilities onto these slides. So I wouldn't recommend like a novice RevealJS user jumping into one of my recent QMD files, the source files that create these slides, just because they're goopified. There's a lot of stuff in there that's not necessary. You're welcome to them if you want them, but again, if you want a little extra help, just reach out to me and I'll do whatever I can to help you get started on this too. I think these are so powerful and so important that I honestly think I would love it if it was kind of the standard instead of the exception, especially in quantitative teaching applications. Okay, so enough about that. So today we're going to cover a topic that I actually don't like. So I've struggled with Shiny, so I'm definitely not an expert on this one. And I think maybe we'll see a little bit of why I struggle with Shiny apps as we get into it a little bit. But what Shiny does is it gives you the power to create online, web-based, interactive apps, staying fully within R. So you don't need to know HTML or JavaScript or CSS. You can actually develop both what's called the front end and the back end, so that what the user sees, and then also the kind of guts and the engine of it. You can create that all using R or Python. We're going to use R because that's what we do weekly here. But you can create that entirely from within R, and these apps are actually quite powerful. So what I have on this week's slides in terms of what we're going to use for resources to build this is I kind of have 4 different important categories of Shiny applications. And so We'll probably spend the most time on this first hyperlink that says standalone. Historically, Shiny apps were created as what are called standalone applications. And these standalone applications were not embedded within a bigger document or within a broader dashboard. Now, increasingly, those are embedded within dashboards that have multiple functions to them. One of those functions might be an interactive user component. There are some differences in terms of structure between the standalone app and the embedded within a document app, but they're largely non-consequential differences. So the basic scripting components are going to be shared on a standalone app versus an embedded app. And so we're going to probably focus most of our time on the standalone app with the thought that if you want to embed it within a dashboard or an HTML document, you can take it and do that. Now, there's one of the not a frustration, but one of the dependencies of these Shiny apps is that they require some specialized server capabilities in terms of deployment and access for people out there who don't have all of the fancy software access that we have. And the only fancy software access we have is R and Shiny. So just a web user that doesn't have access to those needs some capabilities to be activated in order for the Shiny app to work properly. And so what that means is hosting has traditionally been there's been a couple of obstacles to hosting Shiny apps as opposed to something like these slides that you're looking at. These slides that you're looking at, they have interactive components to them. Where's my fancy, there we go. So there's some interactivity here, but the interactivity is not what's called reactive. And so the needs of the server in terms of displaying that information are less than the needs of a server that's trying to fully enable the capabilities of an interactive web app. And so there's a newer kind of capability that has become more and more prevalent and more popular within the last, I'd say, 2 years. So I first heard about Shiny Live, I think, in 2024. There was a presentation given. There were many presentations given, but there were a couple of kind of, hey world, this is a thing presentation given. I think it was at the POSIT conference in 24, I believe. But Shiny Live is one way to get around the specific needs of having a server set up specifically to deploy Shiny apps. And so that could be a whole nother topic of a whole nother week, but unless someone comes and says, hey, I'd love to see that, we probably won't do that. And the fourth resource I have here is a Shiny Assistant. And this Shiny Assistant, I actually forgot about it until this morning. So I'm glad I kind of did a little preparation this morning in terms of what am I going to talk about in terms of Shiny. Because the Shiny Assistant is an AI-enabled kind of completion bot that will really help you in terms of the construction of the Shiny app that you want to create. So we will spend some time on that as well. So we'll probably spend most of our time on the standalone Shiny app as well as interacting with the Shiny Assistant tonight. And I think that's probably the way I would recommend someone coming into this new to start as well. So start with a standalone app and use the Shiny Assistant to help you build that app. You can also use other AI engines, but the Shiny Assistant, I haven't used it now for probably over a year, so we'll revisit it. But it was great the last time we used it. It helped tremendously, and so I'm guessing that it's going to be. Hopefully, it still works. I guess I didn't. We'll find out because I didn't test it. I just kind of stumbled across it again. On the left here, I have these are just mainly notes for myself. So as we check out the capabilities of Shiny as a package, there are online Shiny apps that are out there that you can see and interact with. And get a feel of some of the capabilities. But also within the package, there are 11 built-in apps. And so the way to access those is to use this function here, run example. And then there's an argument to run example, which says display.mode. And if I use that, then I can not only see the app, but we can see the scripting that generated the app. So that's why those are there. Okay, so I'm going to keep this. I guess what I need to do is I need to find this week's slides so I can keep that open, because I'm going to use those hyperlinks. Okay. So let's keep that there. And the reason I do that is because locally I'm going to lose my local preview as soon as we exit out of my QMD here that created the preview. And let's go ahead and start our own Shiny app. So it's probably good practice. We've talked over these weeks, we've talked about types of projects that you're doing and whether or not you want to be operating within a project directory or whether you just can work anywhere on your computer. This probably is one of those. Creating a Shiny app is probably one of the project types where you do want to work within a project directory, but I don't think I'm going to do that. So what I want to show you is I want to show you kind of one way to come in fresh to a Shiny app and creating a Shiny app. So if I'm in RStudio and I go File, New File, there's all kinds of possibilities here in terms of what I can create. We've been spending a lot of time on Quarto documents and Quarto presentations. One thing to take a look at here, let's just open a script file, which is a normal file type, and take a look at what RStudio gives us in terms of a toolbar to interact with here. When it says Untitled 1, there's a save icon. There's find if it's a big script file and you want to look for a keyword or a word. But then I see run, and run is how most people interact with these script files. So if I have 2+2 and I hit the run button, that will activate my script. If I go new file, not RScript, not Quarto document, but if I go down a bit, I'm going to see an option for a Shiny web app. And so in RStudio, if we ask for a Shiny web app, it's going to spin up a different file type. And as a matter of fact, it's going to give us a walkthrough wizard here. So the application name itself, and you can see it kind of wants to give us a project directory. It wants us to put it within a particular location on your computer. The application name itself, we've done a lot of Mooster pieces and kind of giving deference, I guess, to Bullwinkle JMoose. So we'll stick with that. The application type, so this is, let's spend a little bit of time on this because this is a potential source of confusion when you're endeavoring to create a Shiny app and looking at kind of old help files and old resources. So currently, the way to construct a Shiny app is to specify the entire scripting within one file. And that one file traditionally is called app.r. Now, these naming conventions are important in the context of Shiny apps. They're also important. They're also important or consequential when it comes to hosting information. So index is another file name that is very important in different contexts. But for the purposes of a Shiny app, you typically want to name your file app. Now, this is different than the first kind of generation of Shiny apps. When I first started messing around with Shiny apps, there were two files that you would create. One was called UI for the user interface, and one was called server for the engine of it, the scripting that created the functionality, the under the hood stuff. Now, this wizard is giving us the option of using the modern structure or the traditional structure. The only reason I'm pointing this out is because, again, as you search out help on creating and crafting your app, and you're going to run into problems because scripting in Shiny is different than scripting in any other application. It even uses a different programming philosophy, something called reactive programming. I think it's chapter 3, I think, in this. I've read chapter 3 in this book. I can't tell you how many times. I still don't understand it. I think it's called reactive programming, but it's different. It just feels different. It tastes different. It looks different. So you're going to run into issues. As you're searching out answers, you keep in mind that the old traditional way of structuring these was to have two source files, a UI and a server. Now, contemporarily, more modern attempts to create Shiny apps embeds everything within one script file called app. So app data. So we're going to do that as well. So we're going to use the modern convention. Let's go ahead and the location of this is primarily consequential in terms of you launching the app. Now, this isn't that important within RStudio because we have helper functions and helper buttons within RStudio. But if you're in a different IDE, where you place this becomes a little more important. The other reason this is important is they want you to put, because they're saying we want your file to be named app.r, they want you to put this someplace where there is not another app.r. So you want to put this in a location where there's only one app.r. So we'll create a new folder called Bullwinkle, and we'll put our app within Bullwinkle. Now, watch what happens here to my workspace within RStudio. And I don't think I can blow this up much more in terms of the functional applications of this. But you see now, instead of the run helper function that I get, I have a run app. And so it's a different helper button that you get. And so what RStudio does is it looks at, I think the name might have something to do with it. So again, part of the reason the naming is consequential might have to do with RStudio recognizing that this is a different type of file structure. But also certainly there's elements in here that RStudio recognizes. On line 51, I got to believe that this is a very consequential aspect as well. This is the command that kind of launches the app. But if you follow the wizard, what RStudio is going to give you is it's going to give you a example Shiny app. So right out of the box, you have something here that you can play with. And so here you see some of the reactivity. And this is an old faithful geyser data app. And this is it's kind of the traditional app that's used to demonstrate some of the Shiny capabilities. And there's not a lot here in terms of user input. What I have is I have a slider that ranges in value from 1 to 50. And you can choose the number of bins in your histogram. So it's the same information. The data doesn't change. It's just how the frequency distribution itself is going to be presented in terms of granularity. So how many bins do I have in the histogram? So that's kind of the template Shiny example that you get if you walk through the wizard. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to actually take a look at some of these other examples that we have here within the Shiny app itself. And again, you can look online and see all kinds of different examples of Shiny apps. I have a couple Shiny apps that are up and active. If we have time, maybe we'll take a look at those. But within the Shiny package itself as well, there are 11 built-in Shiny apps. And so we should be able to, if I just do run example, can't see it. Run example, open, close parentheses. I should get a listing of the examples that we have here. So 01, hello. I believe that's what we just actually saw. But we can ask for it. So I can say run example. Let's go backwards. So I'm going to say 11, timer. And this is a different Shiny app. I'm not sure what all of these are. This one, it looks like it's just saying what time it is, what day it is, and what time it is. That's not all that interesting. we'll go ahead and ask for a different one. Sliders, tab sets, widgets. Let's try widgets, 07 widgets. Okay, so this one's a little more interesting. So we're actually getting a sidebar. If we look at this left-hand component, we're getting a main area to display output. And then we have some user input. So I can choose between, it looks like 3 different data sets. And then number of observations to view is this observations card or observation space within the app itself. So currently you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 data rows. These are probably, it's probably a head function, and it's giving us the top 10 values. I can back that down to 5. And then there's a, not all apps have this, but there's an update view. So I asked for 5 and I asked for a different data set, and there you see it. If I ask for the cars data set instead, and 7. So you start to see some of the back and forth capabilities. Now, this is neat from a user perspective in terms of, well, I can see some reactivity, but from a scripting perspective, one of the things that we're going to want to see is, well, how do you specify that? Now, the other thing you're seeing here with these Shiny apps is that the app itself is blocking my console. So this is part of the reactivity of Shiny. It's saying I'm busy, or I'm potentially going to be busy. So because I'm potentially going to be busy, I don't want you messing around with any other R script. And so the way to get back to being able to interact with your R session is you can use this stop button, or you can just close out of the app. Either way, it's going to close the active session in terms of that app being alive, so to speak. And so now we're back to the baseline of now I can do whatever I want to do. What I want to do in that app is, let's run the same app, but I'm going to use an argument in there, which is display.mode. And this is really neat because with any of these, with any Shiny app, you can see not only the functionality, but you can see the scripting. And there's usually a little explanation of what some of the scripting actually means. Now, if you're new to this is going to look incredibly overwhelming. So there's a lot here. I can move this up so it's a little easier to see. We could take this, copy it, and run a locally specified script that would give us the same output. But there's a lot of information here just in this small app that doesn't have a ton of functionality, and it does get a little overwhelming. Now, a lot of the density of the script itself is annotations. So what they're doing is they're really trying to help you out here in terms of what these different specifications mean. So there should be a little more example down here. Yeah, here there is as well. This example demonstrates widgets. So if you just go one by one using that display mode showcase, you can really start to scallop and build and layer kind of your understanding of what Shiny is and some of its capabilities. So what was 01? Hello. So hello might be, yeah. So hello is actually just the same old geyser, old faithful histogram. I guess it looks like the colors are a little different. Is that right? Did we have blue before? I don't recall, but I think maybe we didn't have blue before. So this is one way to get a sense of some of the capabilities of Shiny. What I would like to do for the rest of our time tonight is not go through each of those examples individually, but this standalone link really brings you to a walkthrough that is extremely helpful. So this walkthrough to me is the most helpful that I've seen in terms of being able to build Shiny apps. And so one of the things that it does wonderfully is it moves from So even this small example, look at the app script itself. So it looks a little intimidating in terms of the information in there, especially if you're um, not especially if. So it looks intimidating. It's differently structured than what we're used to seeing. Even if you're someone that's an intermediate R user, that's just it's someone else's script to start off with. That's always a little tricky to go through what someone else authored because everyone has kind of their own different styles and annotation methods and things like that. But the link that I have on this week's slides will bring you to a very, very gentle walkthrough, and it starts with the bare basic components that you need in any Shiny app, and it builds up your capabilities from there. So I think that's what I'd like to do tonight is to actually kind of go through this a little bit and show you how to learn how to structure, script, and build your own Shiny app. So where's the part that I want here? We should be able to get just a very, very bare bones, Shiny script that has only the most basic elements. Here we go. This is what I want. So there are kind of two very important elements to each Shiny application, and that one is the user interface and the other is the behind the scenes underneath the hood engine. And so the underneath the hood engine bit is defined in a server portion of your code, and what the user experiences is going to be specified within a user interface portion of your code. And so on this page right here, I'm going to put this page in the comments as well because I think it's important, or at least useful. I find it very useful. So I'm going to copy this full chunk here that does not look intimidating at all. There's two libraries that are being loaded. And then there's a very sparse UI element and there's a very sparse server element. This bottom bit, this is just putting everything together, and so that's normally you're not going to play with that or work with that at all. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of the nice useful stuff that RStudio gave me and just put in the very sparse information here. And I'm going to try to run this app. And that's fine. This is what I want. So I'm just getting a blank slate. Now you see there is a sidebar. So there's a sidebar indicated by this arrow that I have here. But all I have is I have a very blank application with space in it for a sidebar and then space where probably something else goes. Now if we follow this walkthrough, the walkthrough is going to help us kind of slowly build in content. And so the UI component, there's all kinds of, really what Shiny does is it builds in some user capabilities and some user types of interaction that it thinks people might be interested in. So there's maybe, I don't know, 15 or 20 different ways in which users can, out of the box, interact with these Shiny apps. Now you can build your own as well, your own user interface, but there's a bunch of built-in ones. And so I'm going to go ahead and copy some of this content here that it gives just for the UI, and we can slowly start to build and understand what's going on within our Shiny app scripting itself. So I have a title, I have a sidebar, and I have something outside of both title and sidebar. So if I run that app, I see those three components in three sections of my app now. So I have the title panel that's up in the top. If I want to change that to, this is a masterpiece, and reload the app or rerun the app, you'll see that up here. This is a masterpiece. It's kind of like a title bar or a navigation bar. You can get very elaborate with this. We can play with the formatting. We can change the fonts. We can change the background. We can put links to GitHub pages and Twitter or X. We can put all kinds of Facebook. You can do all kinds of things within the toolbar. The sidebar just says sidebar, and then main contents is where normally on these apps, that's where you display feedback. That's where you display output. So as we slowly start to build this, I'm going to look for some content that we might want to play with. Now, there are all kinds of formatting options that you can have. You can change the positioning of your sidebar. So let's go ahead and do that. And that's just an argument within this sidebar command here. Let's call it something else. Let's call it Rocky instead of calling it sidebar. And now it moves it from the left to the right. And most of these apps by default, well, all of the apps by default are going to have the sidebar located on the left. But if you don't want it on the left, you can actually go ahead and put it on the right. I'm going to take that off because, or I guess we can just call it left. So we'll go back to the default. And we're slowly starting to build content within our app itself. There's no functionality in there yet, but we're starting to build content. There are cards. Cards are important to know. Cards are important ways of structuring content within your apps. Now, these cards might have different looks on them if you're running a straight app versus authoring something like a dashboard. So they have some of the terminology is shared across the standalone app and the embedded integrations. Cards is one of the terms that is shared across the standalone app versus the embedded integrations in something like a Quarto authored dashboard. Now, what we're building here is also, you could conceptualize it as a dashboard. But these are more frequently just referred to as apps. Now, what you see with the card is you see that there's some formatting that has taken place now with the main palette of the app itself. There's this rounded palette that you now see, and you didn't see it when I didn't have the card specified. Now, you can have many cards, and you can specify the layouts of the cards. You can have cards in rows. You can have cards in columns. The way in which these look starts to get a little messy and cluttered very quickly. So I don't want to do too many of these, and I don't want to play with layout too much because I want to get the functionality before we drop tonight. But here I have two cards displayed on the main output space, and then I have this collapsible sidebar here that says Rocky. So my app is starting to get some content in it. Let's see, what else do we want to do here? Value boxes. Value boxes are pretty popular, and so value boxes are another piece of information that you frequently see on dashboards, not just apps, but full dashboards. And so these frequently say things like, how many people have responded if it's a survey, what is some summary information for the variables that are being displayed. I'm going to let's take off one of these cards and see if we can replace it with a value box. So you see a value box. Typically, these have colors and icons with them. So let's see if we can. Yeah, here we go. Here's a value box that has a little more specification in it. So this is going to be a little more consistent with what you expect to see. Excuse me, with a value box. I have not coughed as bad tonight as I have been the last few weeks, so hopefully that's better for people. Now, the ordering of these, you can specify really easy within your app as well. If I just move the card up, you just have to be careful of commas. Commas and opening and closing parentheses kind of it's easy to get lost in those as you're specifying not just the user interface elements of your Shiny app, but also the server elements of your Shiny app. But you can see we're starting to actually kind of build up the content in there. This walkthrough is so fantastic. I love it. It has these folded codes in it as it kind of walks you through and asks you to extend capabilities that you've already been shown. If you really want, you can copy the code and fully replicate what they're showing. Again, that clipboard being enabled here. Widgets. Okay, so let's add a control widget at least, and then maybe I don't know, maybe this needs to be a 2-week thing, or if people are not interested in it, we might just use this as an intro to some of the ways in which to approach Shiny apps. So give me some feedback, please. Oops, speaking of that, give me some feedback and let me know if you want more on Shiny apps or if this is enough. Because if this is enough, as we climb the alphabet next week, I was thinking that we'd probably revisit Typist. And Typist, I know, is something that is of interest to many, many people, and I have a lot more fun with Typist than I do Shiny. So I'm kind of okay with that if we end up doing Typist. But if someone wants more on Shiny, we can certainly build a full app instead of just showing kind of how to slowly layer and build. So what you're seeing here, what are called control widgets, these are ways in which these are built-in ways in which Shiny has created shortcuts to ways in which users can interface and interact with the app itself. And so there's buttons, there's checkboxes, there's sliders, there's text entry, there's number entry, there's date entries, there's all kinds of stuff that you can actually do. Let's add a couple of these at least to they're usually put in the sidebar, so we'll actually put them in the sidebar, I think. They got a lot going on here already in this script, and they have a lot of cards. We don't want that. What the heck are you doing? Let's see what they're doing here. Help text, select input. So select input, I think, is what we're going to change, or is what we're going to play with. So within our sidebar, now here's where you start to see, as I was speaking about parentheses and commas, you start to see some of the kind of possible confusion that we're actually getting here. So I think what we want, select input, should be fine as long as we stay within. Let's see if we get an error here. Sorry, I'm not talking through this because I have to be a little bit careful to see my parens. I think I do want that extra. Okay, let's see. Like I said, you start to see some of you can get lost in the scripting very easily, and the convention as you're structuring these is to kind of use these hard returns such that it's easier to navigate and see what's happened, but it leads to very, very long scripts, and it's easy to get lost in here. So this entire specification here is entirely in control of just this drop-down box here that says what I'm going to select. Now, the next step we would take, if we had a little more time, the next step that we would take is we would actually link a database or some information to this such that when the user interacted with this, there would be some corresponding action that's taken in the right-hand section here where we're actually seeing output. We're not going to have time for that tonight, but that's actually let's see if we can do another input type at least, so you can see what those look like. Dates are kind of fun. Let me see if I can find a date. It's funny, it's doing those specifications a little different than what I would think. I'm not sure this is going to work, but let's try it. No, I don't like that card. I don't like the card at all. So let's just try date range and see what happens. Okay, so that worked fine. So again, you got to be really, you got to be really kind of careful, and, and stay on top of what's actually what you're doing. This is not a task that I would want to have to talk through as I'm carefully trying to actually make sure that I'm specifying things correctly. But there you see a date input as well. There's slider inputs. There's all kinds of inputs that you can actually have. Let's do a slider. I think there's a slider down here that we can steal. And again, the wrapping. So you got to be really careful about kind of where one thing stops and another thing starts. So if this works right, I should have the choose a variable in terms of the demographics, then I should have my select dates, and then I should have a slider input. And then all of this stuff, there's, again, the main aspect of these Shiny apps that most people are going to be interested in is not just enabling these user capabilities here in the sidebar, but having them linked to some reaction in the right. And that's the aspect that we're not going to have time for tonight. But as I said, if someone's interested, drop me a note and we can do a section 2. We can do a part 2 next week. If not, I'm probably just going to pop off to typist, because as I said, Shiny's not my favorite thing to work with. I need to build better skill with Shiny. Now, that being said, in this week's slides on the helpful resources note, the 4th bullet point will take you to a link to a description of something called the Shiny Assistant. So you can read through this and this will tell you what the Shiny Assistant is. But somewhere here, there we go, toward the bottom, there's a link to the assistant itself. And this is fantastic. So this will help you with your Shiny app. So I can just say, please write me a simple Shiny app using the Palmer Penguins dataset, because I know we have access to it. Please have all dependencies accounted for within the app. For example, access to the data. And so you can have script generated in OR, you can have script generated in Python. You can ask for just the code, or you can ask for descriptions of the code, which is very helpful for learning. You can ask for more concise descriptions of the code. You can ask for more elaborate descriptions of the code. And the neat thing about this AI assistant is it will give you not just the script, but if you give it enough time, it will usually give you the app itself as well. Now, the app itself is stalling right now, so we'll see if we can run it on our machine. it doesn't like the data. So let's see where we have data, and let's see if we can. It really doesn't like that. So, there's actually two Palmer penguins data sets. And hopefully they're using the one that's straight from the Palmer Penguins package. So let's see if we can outdo the bot here. It looks like it's a data access situation. There we go. Look at that. Okay. So the AI bot, that Shiny assistant, you can see the elements that we discussed as we walked through what I'm recommending as a tutorial in terms of getting you to understand the elements of a Shiny app itself. You can see the sidebar. You can see a few different select user type interfaces. But what they've done, what the Shiny assistant did that we hadn't gotten to tonight, was it actually linked up to data. Now we had to do a little KI, a little cuLOS intelligence, to kind of get around an issue that it had in terms of loading the data, but that's okay. I mean, that was a really quick and easy fix that we got. So let's see what the capabilities of this are. So one of the capabilities is just what's included. So you see in the graph here, Adelaide, chin strap, and Gen 2. If I say I don't want chin strap, it gets rid of that purple mapped set of penguins. Gen 2 is the green ones. It gets rid of those. You can see it rescales the axis as well. So the entire plot kind of stays centered in terms of, it's not maintaining the axes, and the actual display part gets smaller or gets bigger. It's actually being reactive to the size of the information that needs to be displayed. You can probably, I know you can actually play with that as well if you want. You can play with and change what's being displayed. Now, if this is a scatter plot, if I do bill length with bill length, this should just be a straight line, right? There we go, a straight line with the colors on it indicating the species. If we do Gen 2, there's a bunch in the middle. But most people don't do a scatter plot with a variable with itself. And we see a strong negative correlation between flipper length and bill depth. We see strong positive correlation, maybe a little nonlinear. Looks like a little parabolic there, doesn't it? That would be a good candidate for a nonlinear kind of fitting function there. But flipper length and body mass. Now, one of the contributors to those nonlinear associations is sometimes unique and specific and isolated populations. So it's possible that what we're getting here is just 3 groupings without a lot of association in them, and so that doesn't look like there's much. That doesn't look like there's a whole lot, and that doesn't look like there's a whole lot. But if you look at those three types of penguins together, then you as a human start to interpret. It looks like there's something there, when in fact it's just an artifact of 3 different, identifiably different, meaningfully different species that probably shouldn't be considered collectively in the same display there. All right, that sounds kind of professorial, so sorry about that. But neat. So the Shiny assistant is so powerful. It's so neat. That's the way I would approach building a app from scratch. Go straight to that Shiny assistant. Use the link in my slides. One last, I gotta get my 3 quota in here. Use the link that I have in the slides in terms of the walkthrough. The first standalone walkthrough I really think is powerful to help show and demonstrate what the elements are of your script that you're going to want to focus on. It's the UI and the server. UI is a little easier to you'll get it eventually. The server aspect it's a different way of scripting. The resource that I have, the third link in the comments or in the chat, is an online link to Hadley Wickham's book, Mastering Shiny, and that is fairly it's comprehensive in terms of the philosophy behind this and the capabilities and the dependencies that it has. He does intend for two different audiences there. One is kind of a fresh first time Shiny user, but someone that does have experience with R. And then the other one is the other intended population is people who have been using this for a while and really want to know kind of some of the under the hood details. There was one more thing that I wanted to say. Well, I'll remember next week for our recap, sorry. There was one more thing that I thought was important that Hadley had mentioned in his book. And it's escaping me at the moment, sorry. Okay, so if anyone wants to see the second part of building a full app where we actually link some of the user input information to data and to output, drop me a note and we can do that. Otherwise, this is probably, I'll drop it for now, and this will be just kind of a gentle introduction into how to get started with Shiny as opposed to how to finish with it and populate something and publish something. Okay, thank you everybody. Unless I hear from you next week, we'll be on The Typist. Adios.